Hi, my name's Joe, and in 10 months I'll be 30 years old. 6 weeks ago, I joined a gym, and part of this gym is they have classes for nutrition, and they invite people to speak to us. And exactly 4 weeks ago, Dr. Tiffany Wright, the skinny coach, was invited to one of these classes, and I got to see her speak. And I immediately felt like this is a perfect situation for me. What she's saying fits with what I believe, and I believe this woman can help me immensely accomplish one of the hardest things in my life, which is going to be to lose all this weight. So over the next week, I spoke with her and I spoke with my family, and I decided to commit myself to the Skinny Coach program, to Dr. Tiffany Wright. And for the past 3 weeks, I could not be happier. It's been exactly what I wanted and what I expected. But this video today is not about the past 6 weeks of my life. It's about the story of how I got to where I was 6 weeks ago. And 6 weeks ago, I was a 565-pound man. And how I got there started, early on in life. I was always an overweight child, but it was never restrictive. I played sports, football, soccer. I swam. I taught swimming lessons. I was in scouts. Camping, hiking, backpacking, canoeing, rappelling, climbing. I never had any kind of restrictions. I did this all the way through when I was 18 years old. I was still in scouts. And then right after I graduated and I was still 18 years old, I took on a physically demanding job as a delivery driver. And, long 8, 10, 12-hour days where I'm lifting heavy things, carrying things inside and outside, building different things. And I never felt restricted, even though at this time in my life when I was doing deliveries, I was about 200 or 225 pounds. That's pretty significantly overweight. But it didn't stop me. It just, people would say, man, aren't you tired or whatnot? And I would just, no, I'm fine. I'd push through anything and I could accomplish anything, I felt like. And that permeated through school when I was younger and in scouts. I got my Eagle when I was 13 years old. In the Order of the Arrow, I received the Vigil Honor when I was 17 years old. In school, I was always constantly pushing to get the best grades possible and do as good as possible. And I kind of look back and I think, why was I so driven? That's a good thing. But I realized from about 12 to 19 years old, I was also suffering from some emotional issues that kind of manifested physically in certain ways, other than just weight gain or extra weight. And they were just kind of ignored. Even my parents and I really didn't do anything or talk about it, even though we were aware of them. And that's not to say that they were bad parents. They were great parents. I always felt loved. I always had everything I ever needed. My dad he would do anything for me, and so would my mom. But we also shared this common bond of being afraid to talk about difficult subjects or embarrassing subjects. And it was in their own life. It wasn't just about my life. They had things in their own life that were obviously difficult that they should have addressed, and they didn't. So, it wasn't just me suffering from that. And it really, like I said, the only major issue was that I just was extremely driven. I wanted to prove that I wasn't these issues that I was suffering with. When I really started to have major issues, though, with weight, and more so just emotionally, was when I started experiencing death for the first time. And that was my grandma dying my sophomore year. I was 15 years old in the fall. And I don't want anyone to say that I'm sitting here bitching and complaining about people in my life dying and that's why I lose weight and that I'm using that as an excuse. That's far from it. I clearly recognize that I did not handle these situations well at all. And that there were much better ways to handle them. And all I just did was ignore my issues and eat my issues. And, I'm honestly ashamed of the way I handled myself during this time. I could have been much better, and I just wasn't. So again, I'm not trying to make excuses. But, my grandma passed away. About a year later, junior year in spring, my uncle passed away with Alzheimer's. A few months later, a very close buddy from Scouts passed away. It was at the very beginning of my senior year. This guy helped me, Order of the Arrow was a Native American based organization. So we did Native American ceremonies and dancing. And this young man helped me dance and helped me do ceremonies and pushed me to get leadership positions in the Order of the Arrow, where I just did more and more, and I would speak in front of hundreds or thousands of people or dance in front of them or get up and do speeches and ask them to support me to be a leader. And I was elected to office, and I mean, he was a big part of it. And when the deaths were happening, my schoolwork started to suffer, but Scouts didn't. It was like I poured myself into it because it was so important to me, and it made me feel so good. And not long after he passed away at the beginning of my senior year, my dad had a heart attack. And it was just another thing to add to the list. And then another uncle a few months later in spring of my senior year passed away from cancer. He had lung cancer that metastasized into bone. And these hits just kind of kept coming, and I really wasn't gaining a lot of weight. I was already heavy, but schoolwork was really suffering, and I just wasn't doing well. And by my senior year, I started experimenting with alcohol and kind of dabbling in marijuana a little bit and just not being the person I wanted to be anymore. And my dad was pretty sick and had a lot of issues after the heart attack. He was definitely struggling. And by the time I was 19, in the fall of 2004, he had a surgery that just wasn't successful. He had another heart attack because of it. And, I mean, it was a very stressful time. And just as I turned 20 years old, we found out he had esophageal cancer. And that's when I really started putting on weight. At work, I stopped being a delivery worker. I didn't want to be away from my family anymore. I didn't want to be missing school. I wanted to graduate because it was an important thing for my dad and for me to see me graduate. And I took a desk job doing purchasing. And between not being as physically active anymore and just now emotionally eating nonstop after finding out he had cancer, the weight just started flying on. I was about 200, 225 pounds doing deliveries. And ultimately, throughout the surgeries and all the treatments, my dad passed away on February 6th of 2007, and I was 400 pounds. And his death was especially traumatic because I was afraid to tell him goodbye. I was actually mad at some people that were doing it. I didn't want to give up, even though, he was suffering. It was obvious he was suffering. And there was nothing we could do to comfort him, but I was just distraught. I did not want to lose him. I was 21 years old, about to turn 22, when, he died 10 days before my 22nd birthday. And I remember the night that it happened, and that my brother and sister-in-law came over as soon as possible. And he was throwing up blood and he was awake. But then not long after that, he kind of started to lose consciousness to where he wasn't awake, but his eyes were open and he was breathing extremely heavy. And he was just struggling to breathe. And I knew it was the end. And my family was telling him goodbye again. They had already done it previously. And I finally had gathered the courage to tell him to let go. But in order to do it, I asked my family to leave. And I said, I just want to talk to Dad alone. And I got real close to him, and I was whispering to him that it was okay, that I'd be okay, that Mom would be okay, and I'd help her, that I knew it was going to be tough on her. She'd never lived alone, but that I'd help Mom, I'd help myself, that it was okay for him to let go. I didn't want him to suffer anymore. And I was so concentrated on what I was saying and what I was feeling that I didn't realize that I couldn't hear him breathing anymore. And my sister-in-law stuck her head in to check on me, and she said, "Joe, he's gone." And that's when I looked and I realized he wasn't breathing anymore. His eyes weren't open anymore, and he was gone. And I just started wailing. And I just couldn't believe the emotion. I felt like I'd stolen his last moments from my family. It was only 10 minutes between me sending him out and him passing away. And I lived up to my promise. I stayed and took care of my mom for 4 years, and she probably only needed me for, a short period at a time. But I stayed. I didn't want to leave her. And the whole time, despite my family telling me it was okay, I never really forgave myself yet or at that point, for having them miss his final moments. And, I worked with a guy, a therapist that helped me get over some of those, fears and some of those regrets and emotions. And, he was a big part of my life. I never really started losing weight while talking to him, but he really got me mentally in a good place until ultimately he also passed away from just a random heart attack, a heart issue. And losing him was pretty difficult as well. Well, by the time I left my mom in January of 2011, I was up to 500 pounds now. I gained 100 pounds over those 4 years. And I was looking for an apartment when my granddad asked me. He said, I'm 88 years old, and he'd had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma for 12 years, and he needed help. He didn't want to go into a nursing home. He wanted me to live with him, and I was reluctant. And I was almost ashamed I was reluctant. But I ultimately decided, yes, I'm going to help take care of our granddad. I moved in with him in 2011 in January, and he ultimately passed away in the fall of 2013. And since that point, I've been living in his house being as a caretaker for the estate. And in that time, I, kept seeing different therapists and helping myself get emotionally stronger, but I never could quite figure out how to lose weight, and I never could stay on any kind of diet or workout plan. And in March, I finally weighed myself, and I was 565 pounds. And I desperately started searching for a gym, and I didn't want to go to a normal gym. I didn't want to be around all these people that, were working out and already fit and just be this just massive man and embarrassed. And I didn't want to do surgery. I don't want to alter my body. I want to be able to overcome this on my own. And I found this great gym. And because of this great gym, I found Dr. Tiffany Wright. And I started working with Tiffany. And it's been the best times of my life in these past 3 weeks. I still have the occasional emotional struggles, and I still have, bouts of anger, but I feel like what I'm doing right now is meaningful. And I feel like, truthfully, that in no time at all, I'm going to be a happy, healthy, virile man. And what I'm doing now matters. And what I'm doing right now is so important that it's going to define my life from now on. And that I'm going to be a happy, healthy man in my 30s. And I cannot wait. I'm so excited. And I'm already that man. I'm already talking to people more about what's going on. I'm more open. I'm more honest. The transformations I've made in 3 weeks is just absolutely ridiculous in a obviously great way. I couldn't be happier. And like I said, the most important thing is please don't watch this and think that I'm bitching and complaining about the life I was dealt. Because I know the life I was dealt is a lot easier than other people's, and that people have harder struggles, and that I just didn't handle mine well to begin with. But I'm handling it well now, and I'm going to be a happy, healthy person because of it. And anyway, I just really appreciate you taking the time to listen to my story and kind of understand how I got to where I am. So thanks. We'll talk to you soon.